Lock. Well, today is the 24th annual World No Tobacco Day, sponsored by the World Health Organization to raise awareness of the devastating effects of smoking. But a full-page ad in this morning's New York Times challenges the Global Health Organization to get behind a controversial new product known as the e-cig. It's an electronic, non-tobacco cigarette. There it is. We're joined now for an exclusive interview by the man behind those, John Cameron. He is the younger brother of James Cameron of Avatar and Titanic fame. And, of course, by our media reporter, Dennis Neal, who's been following the story very closely. And, Dennis, I want to start with you on this because the FDA they've talked about that they're not so sure about these e-cigs, but they're not really making a move yet on them. So
FDA,
what's going on?
You would think from the onset, why is the FDA saying we'll take any safer alternative? And cigarettes have 4,000 chemicals and 80 carcinogens, and e-cigs have 4 ingredients, no carcinogens, and only nicotine. Why don't we just open up? But instead, they tried to regulate its direct delivery system, lost that battle in court. They tried to ban shipments of it. They tried to block makers from making any quit smoking claims. They've been very kind of tough. Now they want to apply cigarette rules to e-cigs, even though e-cigs have no tobacco and no smoke involved at all. And so for our guest, John Cameron, who he ends up trying it 6 months ago for the first time. He was a pack-a-day smoker for 10 years. He tries it, and he has not gone back to a cancer stick ever since. So, John Cameron, this must be frustrating for you, given that you feel like you found a safer alternative, and yet you're having such a hard time. There's 46 million smokers in the U.S., and I think e-cigs have maybe several 100,000 users. What's the basic problem, John?
Well, I think the problem is just people don't understand what it is. There's a lot of misconception around electronic cigarettes. I talk to people every day about what an electronic cigarette is. I'm on the phone constantly, everyone I bump into, and most people don't realize that there just isn't any tobacco product inside of the electronic cigarette. It's a nicotine delivery system. It has 4 chemicals in it. It's got vaporizing fluid that has come from asthma inhalers that have been FDA approved for 50 years. We have lots of data on what's inside an electronic cigarette. And I think the thing I confront most is just misconception about what it is. It boils down to a battery and some vaporizing fluid.
Yeah, so your ad in the New York Times today, very carefully lawyered, very obtuse, hard to get what you're really saying. You're supporting the WHO, even the WHO, even as you're saying you guys should study this. I mean, what you're basically saying between the lines of this ad, John, is that the FDA and the WHO, they don't get it. They're not embracing it, and they should be. Isn't that what you're saying?
I think what I'm trying to do is open a dialogue. Ultimately, we have to talk about this. I mean, with 6 million lives on the line, I think any form of technology that moves forward that takes that into consideration, I think it's just too much for the human mind to wrap its head around. You have 6 million lives in jeopardy every year because of tobacco use, and here you have a technology that's off the shelf that you can put in people's hands tomorrow that's going to reduce that drastically, significantly. We have to fast-pace this. We have to get in front of the technology. We have to get out there in the world market. The FDA needs to get behind it. The WHO needs to get behind it. But what they need to do is establish an independent commission. I think we've learned a lot from tobacco smoke. And what we've learned is that science done by the industry that's promoting their technology isn't the best science. It's not in the best interest of the consumer. What we need is independent research, and we need to open that dialogue. We need to get the World Health Organization aware that this is an amazing harm reducer for the human race. The reality is it's not just the 6 million lives that you lose every year. 50% of those lives are cut down in the prime of their life. We're talking about another 2.7 million lives that live with the illness for the remainder of their lives. And we're talking about nearly 9 million people that we can save yearly. This is, the graphic need for this technology has kind of been put on the back burner.
But John, what happened with big tobacco is any indication of where this is all going to go, it's going to end up in the court system. Dennis is sitting next to an attorney herself, Kimberly Guilfoyle. That's where I think this is going to end up, especially with the FDA's involvement.
Well, I think so, and I think we know one thing: the FDA rarely moves quickly, especially even in the face of overwhelming evidence of a good idea or a great drug. And you're seeing that happen here, and this is something that can be life-saving. This is probably going to go by the way of the courts, and then it will have its day in court and then prevail, is my prediction. But the sad fact of the matter is, in terms of lives lost in the interim, people who could be helped by it while there's such a delay.
Because nicotine is still a drug at the end of the day. Without the smoke, fine. But
John Cameron, I think one thing working against e-cigs is that you're caught in between. So the pro-tobacco cigarette makers don't want the product, and someone who sells Nicorette gum doesn't necessarily want your product. It's a rival. Yet the anti-smoking people people think it's anathema and it's scandalous to think of a safer cigarette at all. And because your thing looks like a cigarette and I still get to puff on it and hold it, I think the anti-smoking people think that somehow you are giving into addiction and you're not ending it.
Well, look, addiction is serious business. And being a pack-a-day smoker for 10 years, I know how hard it is to quit. I tried everything. I tried patches, I tried gum, and the reality is that the moment I picked up an electronic cigarette, I haven't smoked for 6 months. For me, that's a big deal. More amazingly, I can put down an electronic cigarette whenever I choose to. So from a very personal standpoint, I know this works. This is why I got into it. 6 months ago, trying to stop smoking, instantly stopped the moment I picked up an electronic cigarette. I didn't need to go out and do the immediate data to make the connect. I figured it out on my own. Right. But in the past 6 months, in talking to everybody, what we're learning is that to get to the FDA, to get to the WHO, to get to that conversation, we have to open a dialogue. We have to make sense of this. And the reality is that we have suffered the ills of tobacco for hundreds of years, and significant research has been done. We know exactly how bad it is for us, and here we have a replacement. We have to move on this. We can't just sit idly by.
John Cameron, the CEO of Safe Cig. It could be a great Hollywood movie. Talk to your brother about it. Yeah. Thanks for coming on Fox Business. Of course, we'd like to thank Dennis Neal as well.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, John. Great job.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, well, coming up.